Hello, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well. First, I want to thank HGC for approaching me and for the opportunity to talk here. It means a lot to me to share our story, as I know that there's a lot of studios out there that are making 70, 100 games, working super hard, and nothing pops out until it does. So keep on grinding, guys. I also hope that you will get a lot of value from this session, which will make your way to the hit even shorter. So let's start. Few words about me. My name is Amit Dahan. I'm the CEO and co-founder of HalfBite. I studied economics and business management. That's where I met my partner, co-founder. And after that, I worked for ironSource for 2 years and then started HalfBite. We founded the studio in September 2020, me and Rafael. As I said, I met Rafael in the university. He was actually my roommate for 1 year. And then 4 years later, we started HalfBite. We grew the studio to 12 people, all working remotely from Turkey, Morocco, and Russia, and of course, Israel. And it was important for me to talk about the fact that we're working remotely and about our structure, because I think it shows that you can run any type of business, whether if it's a studio or a different business, successfully without having a physical office. In hyper casual, it serves your goals very, very well. Because when you're starting a hyper casual studio, you're usually starting with a tight budget. And I think that you should spend this budget on talent and not on an office. In addition, talent can be found anywhere in the world. And when you don't have a physical office, you're not putting yourself under any geographical limitation, which enables you to hire talented people, not based on where they are, but solely based on how talented they are. Keep that in mind. A bit about our games. We made a bit more than 70 games until today. Out of them, we had 2 hits, Kendalls ASMR and Last Salon, which we will talk about later on. But first, I would like to start with our failures. So you're probably seeing this slide and seeing those nice CPIs, like those are some of the good CPIs we got during the way. We had 21 cents, 28, 16, 26, very good CPIs. And in thinking to yourself, those are not failures. But when I'm talking about a failure, I'm not talking about failing a CPI test, which has become part of our day-to-day. I'm sure you can all relate. Most of the games that you're going to make are never going to see the light of day, which is perfectly fine. What I'm talking about is a different failure experience, a bit deeper one, in which you're passing the CPI, then you're starting to work on a game, and you're finding yourself working on a game for like 2 or 6 months even, and at the end, you need to ditch this game, throw it to the garbage. And it happens, and I'm sure it happens to some of you, and I would like to talk about it and deep dive into those games that we experienced that in, and see what we learned. So first, I want to talk about Heaven or Hell. Heaven or Hell was our was our 5th or 6th game. It got a very good CPI, 16 cents, as you can see, but still didn't make it. Our creatives was with this swipe left, swipe right mechanic, which worked very well at the time. And as the core loop wasn't enough to retain users, we decided to introduce mini games into the game. The first iteration took 1 month and got us to 20% retention, had a lot of mini games in it, but wasn't enough to be published. So we started working on the second one, in which we added more and more mini games and improved it a little bit. It got us to 24%, which is nice, but not much for a month of work. Then we started working on the third iteration, but before we even finished that, we found that 2 months was simply too long. Elictus came out with Oh God, which was exactly the same game as ours. Not saying they cloned us, it happened all the time in this industry that 2 studios or even more are working on the same game idea. Happened to us a few weeks ago also. But as it was our first game, we couldn't really keep up with them. And they just did it better. And more importantly, much, much, much faster than us, which is everything in this industry. So after Oh God became a huge hit, we decided to quit this race and move on to our next prototype. Because with Heaven or Hell, we simply lost the development race. But We learned from it a lot, and let's see exactly what we learned from it. After Oh God succeeded, became a huge hit, we knew, so after Oh God succeeded, we just sat and thought, how could we change this situation? And we came up with a few insights. First of all, know your capabilities. You got a 4-people team trying to make mini games, while other studios like Alictus had a 30-people team and various mini games ready to use from their previous games. And you can't compete with that by working regularly with a 4-people team. And if you do, you're living your success to luck, because in this industry, if someone didn't clone your game, you're lucky. But in my eyes, you should always need to work out of the assumption that someone is going to clone your game or working on the same idea as you. And if you're not, it would be very, very hard for you to publish a game successfully. So either think about very easy mini games to make, which takes less time, or change your plan. Pass on the mini games. Then the second insight we came up with was always think ahead and plan the next step. If you're making a mini game, a game based on mini games, know that from the start and build a proper roadmap, or start working on the mini games before you even pass the CPI test. Because, once you have a mini game, you can reuse it in other games. So I think that it's worth making this trade-off. So even if the game wouldn't pass the CPI test, you can still use this mini game in another game. The third insight was create a gap between you and your competition. Once you got that killer CPI we've been waiting for so long, don't go to sleep until you're creating enough content to create a real significant gap between you and the competitors. This gap, if it's big enough, it will make them think twice before trying to clone you or working on the same idea, because you will be so far ahead in the race that in order to catch you up, they will have to invest a lot of resources, which will not be worth it most of the time. So create this gap and secure yourself from people that are working on the same idea or cloning you. This is the third insight. Now, I want to talk to you about another game, Kendalls ASMR. Kendalls ASMR was our 10th or 15th game, if I'm not mistaken. And back then, we already grew to about 6 people. So applying our lessons from heaven or hell, once this game passed the CPI test, we didn't sleep for like a month. We knew we can take this idea to a lot of directions. It's based on a social media trend. And you can make various types of candles in various types of ways. So we got 21 CPI, and we did 7 iterations, which took about 9 months. And let's see why. We started working on this game, and first we tried making a lot of levels with the main core of this game, which is the sand dipping mechanic, which you can see in the ad. It got us to about 70% retention, which was very low. Then we added some tweaks to it and got to 19% retention. Still very low. Then we worked super hard on this game, and we added various types of mechanics to the game, which took the project to 22% retention, which was still low. So after 4 iterations and a lot of content created, we were starting to get pretty skeptical. We didn't believe that this game is going to be published, so we decreased the pressure on this one, and we focused on making more prototypes. First, is our hopes for this game were not so high. And second, because you got to keep the lights on somehow. I think that this is also one of the most common dilemmas for a hyper-casual developer. Like, am I going to take the risk and put all my resources into this one game? Or should I ditch the project and create and wait for the next good CPI? Our experience taught us that you should definitely put all your eggs into this one basket and try to squeeze the game for at least 5 or 6 iterations, as you'll never know what's going to be the feature that will get you to 30, 35% retention, as you will see in the next game that we'll talk about. Anyways, we decided to keep working on this game, but we allocated a specific time of the week where we're working on it. And in the rest of the time, we worked on other prototypes. So eventually, after trying a lot of stuff, what increased our metrics was actually making changes in the core loop of the game, in the sand dipping mechanic. We added a lot of features to it. We added decorations. We made the wax color mixing look much better. And we added a lot of stuff which supported this core loop. And that's what actually got us to 30% retention day one and 20 minutes playtime, which was more than enough to publish this game. But we did it a little bit too late. As the game CPI increased, we managed to decrease it, but we couldn't decrease it enough to make a huge hit out of this game. This game has very good metrics. It got to the 39th place in iOS. It has more than 3 million downloads, and it's making money. The game is right now on the Crazy Labs Publishing for All program, which is basically enabling us to not invest too much efforts into it and still get a steady income so we can work on our next hit. So as I said, we did everything that needed to be done, but we did it a little bit too late. And let's see what we learned from it. First of all, explore the core mechanic of your game as much as possible. As you saw, especially in simulation, what moves the needle are changes and improvements in the core mechanic of the game. Changes and improvements like this are a bit harder to come up with, but much easier to execute, especially in terms of the development, because you don't need to create a new mechanic, you don't need to create a new environment. All you do is you just add stuff to the current scene that you got. So explore that, because at the end of the day, this is what moves the needle. Second tip is try to save money. Just try to save a lot of money and keep money in your bank account for when you're going to pass this CPI test, because once you pass the CPI test, you get a small compensation from the publisher, but nothing that really can help you, take a few months break from making prototypes and develop this game and really exhaust the options out of this game and test it for at least 6 or 7 iterations. So keep that in mind. And I'm saying that because, if we had more money or faith into Kendalls, we could have released this game like 6 months earlier and scale it on a much lower CPI, which would have made it a much bigger hit than what it is today. So we talked about our failures, our learnings, and now let's see how we implemented all of those into the process of Lash Salon and how we made this game the hit that it is today. So Lash Salon, it is our most successful game up to date. The game was in the top 3 in iOS US, and is still going up and down the top 50 for over 3 months now. But first, I want to talk about how a team of mostly guys came up with the Lash Salon game, which is the most feminine topic ever. So I got 3 words for you: social media research. As a hyper-casual studio, we're always on the watch for trendy hashtags which we can then gamify. As a part of our research, we tracked the Lash hashtag, which had over 10 billion views. And in addition to those 10 billion views, it was full of cringy, disgusting videos, which is everything that you need for a low CPI. I mean, there were tons of videos. Like, you won't believe what you can do with your lashes. You can do lash lifting, lash curling, stretching, cleaning, you name it. And all of this is taking space in my brain for no reason except for this game. And as I said, when the numbers of the hashtag are in billions, your odds of getting a low CPI increases significantly. So due to the low CPI of this game and our experience, before the test even ended, we started planning the day 1 version. And as I said, we were mostly men. So with the help of our small girl power and Crazy Labs, amazing Moria, our publishing manager Hila, and Noam, who helped us a lot in finding the right references and content, we managed to come up with a very precise plan for the day 1 version. Then we took almost all our team. We were already 12 people. The people in the team that were not working on this game were working on another game that also passed CPI. So we took every person that was available and we put them all to work on this game. We were working tirelessly, working nights, working weekends for more than 2 weeks. And so first of all, shout out to our amazing team. Really, this wouldn't have happened without you. And after 2 weeks, we managed to release a version with tons of content. And by that, as I said earlier, we created a huge gap on whoever will try to clone or test this idea. Eventually, we released this version with 5 unique mechanics, 10 different characters, over 30 unique levels, and really endless amount of designs and colors for users to choose from. And this got us to 23% day one and 13 minutes usage in the first 24 hours, which wasn't enough. We were also looking at the metric of users playing level 20, because we saw that, from this level, it's starting to get really, really low. So we wanted to improve this metric, and we knew that if we will improve it, it will also improve retention and usage. And as you can see in the chart, it was 9% at the time. 9% of the users got to level 20. So 91% churned the game until level 20. So let's go real quick about the lessons we implemented into the process of this game. Mind the competitive landscape. Back then, we were already 12 people. We had very good production value, and we knew how to get this production value very, very quick. You need to understand all of the content in this game was created from scratch, which is super important in simulation games, as you're trying to simulate the reality. So you need assets that are looking as close as possible to things in real life. And the only way you can do it is create it from scratch. We created the character, animations, textures, tools, environment, everything is created from scratch. So we knew the competitive landscape, and we knew that we had the capabilities to release a high quality product in minimum amount of time. Think ahead. From the moment we started working on this game, we knew the whole game is going to be around customizing the character. And we always gathered videos and ideas which we could then use as different mechanics for this game. We knew how much time it would take us to do each one, and we prioritized it accordingly. And last but not least, create a gap. As mentioned, we didn't sleep for 2 weeks, and we released a version with tons of content, and in addition, infrastructure for more content, an easy way to create and edit level funnels, which then made our lives much easier when working on the next versions of the game. But it wasn't enough, as I said. So we started working on the third version. And of course, while working on the third version of the game, one of our competitors just took our storefront in Google Play, as you can see, and copied it. The logo was our logo at the time. The screenshots were our screenshots. And even the info about the game was copied. They just did copy paste. And if you would download this game and open the app, you would see our ads, and at the end it would say coming soon. Of course, I sent it to the team immediately because it was so fun, seeing that and knowing that we invested so much time and effort in the past 2 weeks just to beat the situation. And we did, because eventually these guys didn't continue developing the game. And I think that it's because we opened a gap that was big enough to eliminate them from the race, simply because we were too far ahead. And then, second version of the game. We added UI improvements. We added meta. As you can see, you can upgrade your salon, and basically a way to spend your money. And we added 2 mechanics, which then took us to 25%. Day one still wasn't enough, increased by 1%. And we increased the usage in 5 minutes, which was very nice. If we're looking at users playing in level 20, we went up to 14%, a 5% increase. Still not enough. We kept working. And then third iteration. The whole team was still working on this game. We added 2 more mechanics, and we had 9 mechanics in total. But this wasn't what made a big difference on this game, as those mechanics were also already introduced in level 14, 16, and the huge improvement we saw actually came from the first levels. So what actually moved the needle was a tip I got from my niece. I let her play the game, and her feedback was, it's a cool game, but it's a bit too easy to unlock stuff. So before this feedback, we unlocked new mechanics on each level. So at the end of each of the first 5 or 6 levels, you would unlock something. And I guess it was a bit too overwhelming for the users. So what we did is we just spaced it. We made it so that you would unlock a new mechanic every 2 or 3 levels, which eventually made the users stay in the game in order to discover those new mechanics. And then finally, we saw a huge increase in the users playing level 20, which rose up to 29%. Remember, we started at 9%, which means a 300% increase in this in this metric. And it didn't came from adding more content to the game. It actually came from doing a proper level funnel management. We just spaced the levels and magic happened. And from them, it's all history. The game got 35% retention day one, 22 minutes, 24 hours usage. And, we managed to scale this game very, very nicely. It got to the top 3 in the US, and it's still going up and down the top 50 charts for over 3 months now. And that's it, guys. This was our journey to our first hit, and I believe that we'll have a lot more of them coming. So stay tuned. I hope it was helpful for you, and I would like to thank everyone. Please ask any questions you have, and I will gladly answer it. Thank you.